Hello, my name's Amy and I am 38 years old. On the 13th of February, I was diagnosed with womb cancer. Talking on camera is completely out of my comfort zone. It's not something I've done before, but I feel like my story is too important not to share. If you recognise me from some of my videos of photos and captions that I've been putting on, then you might have seen some of the comments I've had on my videos. A lot of people are asking for what my symptoms were and why I started the ball rolling and how I found out that I had womb cancer. So October last year, I went out to work as normal. I realised that I was bleeding really heavily. This was totally not normal for me. You know, I've never been a heavy bleeder. I rang my cousin and she gave us some advice and told us I should maybe speak to 111 because it was of how heavy it was. I spoke to 111 straight away and they advised me that they wanted to send an ambulance because of the amount of blood that I had lost. So the idea of having an ambulance at my place of work, I didn't want that. My husband was only 2 minutes down the road, so I rang him to come and collect us. He took us straight into A&E, and when we walked through the doors, I had actually passed out because I'd lost so much blood. Checked my blood pressure straight away. My blood pressure was 60/45. So obviously I was seen to straight away. Once I was brought back round and they had given us fluids and things like that, you know, and stabilised my condition, they started giving us some tablets to obviously stem the bleeding. Once that bleeding had been settled, I was then sent for an ultrasound scan. Once all that was done, the doctor had came back and advised there was some thickening of my endometrium lining. However, I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know what that meant, nothing. And, you know, he really played it down. It was nothing to worry about. He was going to refer us to gynae and I would get sorted with them, and you know, they would deal with it if it needed dealing with. He said that the markers weren't that bad, weren't that high, so you know, it was just a precaution. At no point did I ever think it was going to come back as cancer. I'd never thought of womb cancer, so symptom wise I never knew that these were symptoms, but my symptoms were I had abnormal heavy bleeding. I had very, very irregular periods, so I could go where it was a space of 3 months between a one. Sometimes I would come on the dot every month for 3 to 6 months, but then I wouldn't have a period for around about a year, maybe a bit longer, so I was always irregular. The heavy bleeding obviously started in October. I've had lower back pain for a couple of years, which now I've found out that could be one of the symptoms of womb cancer. I've always complained about what I've always thought is like a little twinge in my right ovary, and it comes and goes all the time. Sometimes it's a bit of a stabbing pain, sometimes it's just a little twinge, and I've always said I've got that pain again in my right ovary. But now I've since learned that that's actually not my right ovary. It is the cancer where I'm getting the pain from. So I had a smear test 3 months before my bleeding started. When I got my diagnosis in February, I did say to the consultant, why wasn't this picked up in my smear test? Because I had just recently had one, and the consultant had said a smear test doesn't test for womb cancer. So if you do have any kind of symptoms, you know, where you could think this actually could be it, and you've got a smear test coming up, just know that that smear test will not test for womb cancer. So after I was diagnosed, I went home and I went straight onto Google and social media to try and find some sort of just some answers. It's the darkest, loneliest place you'll ever go in your life, that first few weeks after diagnosis. I wanted to find some answers. I wanted to find somebody in the same position as me, and I really struggled. So what I did find is that womb cancer isn't talked about much. It's not talked about enough. You know, the cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, these cancers are spoken about and people worldwide know about these cancers. I got to 38 years old and in my wildest dreams I would never have thought this is womb cancer. I had a ton of questions, I had a ton of emotions, and I didn't know where to go, I didn't know who to turn to. There's not that much out there. There is a Facebook group for people with or people who have survived womb cancer. which has been quite helpful. However, that's all that there has been. That there is a website called Peaches Trust that is also a really helpful website. However, the word is not spread enough. People need to be talking about womb cancer. People need to be knowing what symptoms they're looking for. You know, people need to not be silenced or palmed off by a doctor. I was for years. We went through lots of tests for fertility. I had, you name it, I had that test. But at no point did anybody connect the dots of what this actually could be. So I've been to the doctors and spoke to many doctors and, you know, fertility specialists, things like that, about this pain in my right ovary. And it's always just been, it's nothing. We can't see anything on your ovary. And that was it. That's it. It's forgot about. Just get on with it. It's nothing. We've told you it's nothing. It's fine. However, that's not what that pain was. So that's why I'm trying to get my story across, because I think it's really important that women understand, if you know in yourself that something's not right, you need to fight to get checked. Because if you feel within yourself that there's something not right, there's nobody that knows your body like yourself. Therefore, fight for it. Fight for a test. Fight for a scan. Ring for cancellations. Get that appointment. Get yourself checked. Because if you get this quick enough, you may be stage 1 and you've got a lot of options. Luckily, I have options. So I've chose my treatment. I had 2 options. I'll go into that on another video. But that's because it was found early. I mean, I did try and get it even earlier. You know, I feel grateful that it was found as early as it was, and that I do have these options, and that I don't just have to get everything taken away from us, because I've got so many hopes and so many wishes. And, you know, as soon as I heard it's womb cancer, I felt like my world had crashed around us. I thought the world was over, and it turns out, after speaking to the doctor in a little bit more depth, that I do actually have options. So, you know, I've went for an option which is a harder fight, a longer fight, but it's the right option for me. I appreciate it if you have gotten to the end of this video. I know that I have maybe waffled on a little bit. It might be a little bit patchy, so I'm sorry about that. Like I said, this is not something I normally do. I'll get used to it, I'm sure, as time goes on. But thank you so much for listening to this first video. If you do want to reach out, my inbox is open. I'm here to talk. You know, I'm here to make somebody feel less lonely in an awful, horrible, dark time if they've just been diagnosed. If you have any worries or concerns, I wouldn't give medical advice out. However, I'm happy to support somebody. I would never want anyone to feel the way that I did after my diagnosis. So if you have gotten to the end of this, I would really appreciate it if you were to like and share, because you never know, this video could actually help somebody find their cancer at stage 1.